Think of the legends that come from the night sky. You know, a starman.
David was always looking for the new thing.
He was always experimenting.
A caterpillar has to come out of its cocoon in order to become a butterfly.
Well, I mean, how we approached it is in the film. I suppose if you mean Bowie is obviously a huge subject, icon of music, you know, really sort of almost peerless in, you know, and so I approached the subject carefully. I suppose, you know, what we wanted to do was tell a story about a less examined part of Bowie's career. So we wanted to look at the 1990s onwards, really, you know, up to and including his, you know, probably what I would call his greatest artistic achievement in Black Star. But also take a look at the whole of Bowie's career, or, you know, elements of it in order to contextualise the story that we were telling from the 90s onwards. So we do go back in time. We don't go back in time and look at everything. It's not a definitive Bowie film, but, you know, what we wanted to do was tell a story about creativity, about, you know, his artistry, the power of creativity, I suppose, and also about mortality and you know, about the constant change that Bowie represents. So my first memory of Bowie, I suppose, you know, I'm a child of the 80s, so yeah. I grew up, Bowie he'd already had his sort of perfect 10 years between 71 and 81 where he released those incredible albums. He'd made Let's Dance and you know, he was in the background of my awareness. He was influencing British culture before I even knew what culture was, I suppose. My first memory of him is as he appeared in the film The Labyrinth. I don't know if that's a big film in Italy, but in Britain it's a real cult classic, and I have slightly disturbing memories of Bowie appearing as the Goblin King and the Wall of Hands in The Labyrinth. And I was young, you know, when that came out, so I suppose, you know, somewhat strangely, I didn't experience his arrival on the scene as this cultural icon. He just was one when I sort of grew up, and then in the 90s, as music became more important to me, you know, I sort of tapped into him when he was making some dance music. Earthling was the first Bowie album that I bought. That was sort of when I came of age and started buying albums. So that was the first one. I went backwards from there. You know, obviously amazing music and art to discover that he created, and you know, his legacy now, to move on. You know, he is, like I said, he's a great icon of 20th century and early 21st century music in a time, I suppose, when and you know, became one at a time that I don't think we're going to see again. You know, I think that the sort of musicians of the late 20th century, and you know, the solo artists of the late 20th century, there aren't many that had the longevity, the creativity, the sort of variety, the depth, the sort of a scale of what he achieved in his work, and that's not even mentioning, you know, the art, the acting. Yeah. You know, he's an incredible figure, and I suppose, you know, his greatness is something that I sort of wanted to try and capture in the film, and I think we've done that. I do think that you get a sense of quite how spectacular he was, even without us, you know, doing every single album that he ever made. Yeah. I think you sort of understand from what we've put together that, you know, quite how special he was.
Right. And what is Bowie's legacy in your personal life? I mean, do you think that there's a sort of connection between his own experiences in your life, your personal life?
I mean,
life?
You know, Bowie's a musical hero. He has a legacy in terms of the music that I listen to. He has a legacy in his very inspirational figure. You know, I'm a creative, I make art, and having someone to look at that, you know, to you know, inspire everybody, I think is what Bowie can do. I mean, you know, I guess, you know, Bowie often is talked about as being the outsider's musician. You know, I guess I was a bit of an outsider. I don't think that that's how I tap into Bowie. I think he just blows me away. And I think that the sort of intelligence, the variety, the creativity of what he made is something that, you know, it's not something that is easy to sort of sum up in a couple of sentences. You know, he made some incredible work, and I think the richness of that work is something that you can return to time and time again, and it's always impressive. I mean, I think Black Star is an inspirational work. You know, it is an incredible achievement to, you know, quite apart from his illness, at the age that he was, to change again, to refuse to stand still. You know, I've spoken a lot about Bowie. I think what's most impressive and most interesting about Bowie is his willingness to, you know, throw it all up in the air and start again. And even with that last album, when he you know, he was unwell when he started to make it. He knew that he was unwell, and he wanted to do something different. And I think that, you know, in your late 60s is something to inspire everybody, because, you know, the truth is, as I approach middle age, you know, I'm middle-aged now, and it's easy to stand still and to try and look for comfort and ease, and you know, to rest easy as you get older, and he certainly didn't do that. And I think that, you know, from the perspective of New Beginnings, the music, the themes of mortality and death that are never far away in the album are obviously very moving and haunting in some ways. And you listen to the album, you know, in the knowledge of what he was going through, and it really does put a different spin on the entire piece. But yes, I mean, you know, I think that, you know, sorry, I've sort of lost my thread. You wanted to know about whether I found it inspirational. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I certainly do find it inspirational. You know, I can't think of any other artist that has, you know, thrown it all up in the air and kept going right up until the end. There are very few. You know, maybe Cohen wrote, you know, he brought out his album at the end. Mozart wrote a requiem as he was dying. I mean, there aren't, you know, those figures in music history are, you know, he's almost peerless, and I suppose that's what makes that album such a spectacular achievement, and it's what makes it the case that I think people will be talking about it, thinking about it, listening to it for generations to come.
To me, it's a sort of everlasting challenge. I mean, that very album, because it's it's something which brings you back to your own reality and to what you have to do in life. I think that's very powerful.
It is
at least to me.
Yeah, it's an incredibly powerful album, and I think for me, I think it's just, I mean, in the nature of continuing to create at that stage of life, with that bravery and fearlessness. I mean, you know, I don't know what he was going through personally. You know, I didn't know. I've never met Bowie, but it's, you know, it's breathtaking to do what he did, and, you know, remarkable. Well, I mean, I suppose, you know, it's a sort of process of spinning plates. We had a story that we wanted to tell, and we had people that we wanted to tell the story for us, you know. And so, as you build your, you know, I had a very excellent producer called Dan Hall that brilliantly assembled this cast of collaborators and friends and people who were all there when these things happened. They were in the room with Bowie, they worked with Bowie, they loved Bowie, and I guess the centre of the film, the heart of the film, are their stories and the music, and from there, in terms of the archive that we chose, you build it around the stories that your contributors have offered to you, and the flow of time that you're trying to sort of demonstrate to the audience. I think that, being commissioned to make a film about Bowie is quite a weight of responsibility, and every film that I make is a sort of practice of, you're growing a sort of living thing when you make a film, and there are lots of elements that go into the recipe, and Bowie is a character and was a person, is an icon that requires you to address things like his public-facing mythology, being otherworldly, as well as our desire and hope to tell a story about a human behind that myth. And it involves, a sort of a dance between all those elements that hopefully, has landed, and definitely has landed for a lot of people. And I guess what was important to me was that it wasn't just a list of facts. The film is not a list of albums that Bowie made. I don't mention some of the albums that he made during the time. You sort of can't. You choose when you're making a film. Do you want it to be granular and list-like? Or do you want it to be emotional and flow? And we went for the latter. And look, there are some amazing films that have been made about Bowie that are very, very informational. I think this one is more emotional than that, perhaps. And they're all wonderful in their own way. Stylistically, this is its own thing, and I guess the next thing will be something different, and that's the nature of making work and art. And he was very inspirational and central to everything that popped out of this film, for sure.